You are listening to Business Heroine Radio for the entrepreneur who says she will and does. Join the Business Heroine community today at businessheroinemagazine.com. And now, tune into the show.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ann Perry, founder of Business Heroine, and I am here with our beautiful September cover girl, Elena Lipson. Thank you for joining us, Elena.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure. So for those of you who are new to Elena, I want to tell you a little bit about her. Elena is the divine self-care mentor, transformational coach, speaker, retreat leader, and creator of the 21 Days of Divine Self-Care online course. So through her coaching, retreats, and programs, Elena works with women all over the world to become the number one asset in their life, in their business, and in the bedroom, so they can reconnect with their purpose and passion. It's so important. And Elena's lived in Russia, New York City, California, and today happily enjoys green trees and the fresh air of the Pacific Northwest with her amazing husband, zen-kiddo, and sweet soul pup, Chi-Chi. Love it. So this topic of divine self-care and becoming the number one asset in our lives as women is critical. And I would just love to hear, your story, if you'd share with us about how you ended up doing this, how you ended up doing what you do.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a series of awakenings in my life. And I can remember, this question is really one that I love to explore over and over again, just because I feel like every time you look at your life through a different lens, you can pull out those stories. You can pull out those moments of, oh yeah, I can see how that connected, right? Like even though in the moment you might not be able to see it as it's happening, but when you look back, you can really see it. So I can see that, growing up, I watched, and I asked this of a lot of my clients, like, why is self-care important to you? What's your perception of it? So when I was growing up, I remember watching my mom work really, really hard, work full time, still cooking clean. We also definitely helped, but she was always going. Like, I don't remember her consciously resting. And I think somewhere inside that planted this seed of awareness of how a woman is supposed to be in a household and how you're supposed to just keep going, 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 and layering that on my sort of immigrant mentality, which is you just, you work your butt off all the time for this opportunity and be grateful for it. So that's exactly what I did. I started working when I was really young. As soon as I could make $1, I did. I actually lied about my age to work at the cookie house at the mall because I just had this sense of like, I need to be making money. I need to be doing something. And I really enjoyed it. It was never a burden. I really loved expressing myself through work and being very creative. And so by the time I got to college, it was fitting that I ended up majoring in organizational psychology, which was all about figuring out what makes companies tick, what makes productivity better, what makes turnover lower, like all these different things. And I was fascinated by it. So right after graduation, and pretty much throughout school, I was working. I was climbing the corporate ladder. Like that was my direction. I knew I wanted to be in a nice suit. I knew I wanted to be in some tall, high-rise building in New York. I wanted to do something that really stimulated me and really challenged me, and that's what I did. So I was in sales. I quickly rose. Whatever I did, I quickly rose, and I couldn't quite understand it while it was happening because I felt like, oh, I just have a good personality. But looking back, I can sort of unravel it and see that what I was doing was I just had a really like kick-ass work ethic. I showed up. I was present. I did more than I was expected to do. I was creative, all the things that really make a good entrepreneur, which I feel like in my soul I always was, because I was always doing more than one thing. So I eventually went into corporate training. It was a trajectory that I kind of set for myself. I knew I wanted to be in front of people. I knew I wanted to teach people to do things. I love technology. So I was a corporate trainer within several different organizations before my son was born. And throughout that time, I was gifted with this opportunity of having an executive coach train our management team. And I really loved what they were doing. So I cornered her actually afterwards. I'm like, I love what you're doing. what is this? Is this like training? What do you do? And she said,
Yeah.
well, we're executive coaches and we come in and we consult with companies. And so I knew what she was doing because she was training me. So I decided that is what I want to do. Like, I want to have my own company and I want to teach people how to do not just the technical side of their job, but the inspirational side of their job, the communication side of their job.
Mm-hmm.
So I hired her personally. And I was going, working during the day, doing my coaching education in the evening, taking on my first clients. I mean, I had big cojones because I'm like, I'm taking my first client. I am, and I just did. I just kind of did it without
Yeah.
really knowing that I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I was working a lot
Mm-hmm.
during these, I would say about 8 to 10 years. I was doing a lot of really good at my work during the day, coming home at night, doing my education and doing my hours of coaching they required and taking new clients. And I could even just feel exhausted even saying it now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot.
So luckily for me, when my son was born, I just knew intuitively that I did not want to go back to that pace. I couldn't imagine leaving a 6 week old at home. That was the time we got for, being home with your baby for 6 weeks. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't imagine doing that. So I quickly started thinking about, well, what am I going to do here? Like, what can I do that I still want to be creative? I still want to make money. I want to do something. And so between the time that I found out I was pregnant, I ended up leaving my corporate training job. We actually moved states, so it was a perfect time to make this transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked myself, well, what am I most passionate about right now? And it was, of course, my baby. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started an e-commerce store from scratch called La Natural. And it was awesome. It was such hard work and so challenging, but
Wow.
really important lessons happened along the way. And because this was before Facebook, before Pinterest, before Twitter, I had to learn how to do it like the hard way, which
Uh-huh.
was I can remember designing my own postcards and, handing them out, going to meetings and writing articles for magazines. And so I really learned how to build a website, figure out the whole e-commerce thing, how to write copy for my products, and it went pretty well. Like, it actually was, every time I made a sale, I couldn't believe it almost, because like, how did they find me? How did you find me? So,
Uh-huh.
learning Google, learning all that stuff that I needed to know. And I continued, even though I had my son literally in one arm
Mm-hmm.
and designing the website on the other hand, with the other hand. So I was sort of continuing the same rhythm that I was doing before, which
Mm-hmm.
was, it was always on my mind. I was always thinking about my company. And I was present with my son. I don't want to make it sound like I was some workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely present and playful and really enjoyed the time with my kiddo. But I can also remember times where he was, toddling around my leg and I'm sitting there writing on my computer and he's like, Mama, Mama. I'm like, hold on, honey, hold on. And I look back at those moments, not that there were, a whole lot of them, but there were enough to make me go, like, that was not the best situation.
Mm.
Like, on the one hand, yes, I had the flexibility to work whenever I wanted to, but then on the other hand, I had the flexibility to work whenever I wanted to.
Right.
So, like, I didn't nap when he napped, and when he went to sleep at night, I was blogging, I was doing my thing at night. So I was still keeping up that pace. And I don't know if I was trying to prove something or if I'm just a really driven person, and I can see that in my clients today too. Like, they just want it so badly
Mm-hmm.
that they're not seeing outside of that bubble. And so I feel like my life was in some ways really beautiful and amazing. And in another perspective, I feel like I threw myself in so fully that I wasn't addressing other issues like my, body needs and
Mm-hmm.
my diet and just playtime, really enjoying that time off until I became really conscious of it. So 3 years, a little over 3 years after I started that business, we made a family decision to sell the company. I sold all of the inventory that I had, and I was like a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've experienced this, Anne, but when you create space for something, everything just bubbles up. Things that
Yeah.
you've been trying to keep under water have just bubbled up. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, I realized like my body was not feeling good.
Mm.
And I think fate sort of intervened because my son had some allergy issues as well, which
Mm-hmm.
was no accident. And we both started exploring because I did, for him, I was exploring his allergies. And through that, I changed my diet because he had to. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, I realized like my body was, again, not well. I was chronically tired, like all the time. If you said take a nap at any time during the day, I would have laid down and taken a nap. So what ended up, I got diagnosed with two autoimmune issues. One that really explained the chronic exhaustion. It's called Epstein-Barr. And anytime you have stress in your body, it makes you feel like you have the flu. So since I was chronically stressed, that's how I felt.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is, before that, when I was in the corporate world, about every like 6 to 8 weeks, I would get hit with this flu-like thing where I would be out for like 2 or 3 days or more. And so I just thought it was part of my cycle. Like, oh, I just get sick every 2 months or so. And that's not healthy.
Right.
My body was just down because I wasn't giving myself a down. You know, maybe like that 1 week of vacation a year was my down, but I wasn't giving myself like rest and rejuvenation and nourishment. I wasn't doing that every day. So I really consider myself to be, it wasn't like it wasn't terrible. Like I wasn't near death or anything, but in some ways I felt like part of me was dying away. I didn't want to continue that way. I didn't want to be diagnosed with two autoimmune issues, but it was a really good wake-up call.
Yeah.
And then through that process of trying to figure out what my body was doing, all these random pains and, bend over kind of pains, like this is not good. I was diagnosed with precancerous colon cells, and I knew I really need to figure this out. So I knew I wanted to be online. I knew I still wanted to work, but it had to be on my own terms, like really on my own terms. And that's when fate intervened again. And I discovered this beautiful marketing training called B School. And it was almost like I can see where everything shifted then, because I realized I can do everything I was doing. I can do it online, but I can do it in a way that was in my control. Like I could rest when I wanted to, really set up my schedule the way I wanted to. And what I didn't realize was happening at the time was that when I was setting up my business, thinking about who I wanted to work with and how, creating my dream calendar, finding my sweet spot, I was infusing my new way of thinking. Because when I sold my company before, I ended up taking 6 months off of nothing, which was definitely a first for me. And I ended up going to this yoga intensive 6 month training where I would go on the weekends and a couple of times during the week. And we really dove into everything. It was a yoga and psychology mix. So it was your inner world, your outer world, your habits, your energetic presence, your physical body. It was everything. And so I really got this opportunity to pause in a way that I really hadn't ever in my life, and look at myself, look at my relationships, look at, what I was doing that I wasn't happy with, look at the beliefs that I was holding on to. It was so powerful. Like everything got changed during that time. So I really committed myself to allowing that journey to infuse whatever I was doing next, not to get back on this treadmill of constantly working and allowing the rhythm to lead me anymore. I was going to define it. So that's what I did.
Wow, amazing. What a fascinating journey. And so I'm guessing that most of your clients are also highly ambitious type of women who are, or you work with just women, right? For the most part?
I do work with just women.
So I'm guessing that they're highly ambitious, just like how you were, and just needing to have those reminders to slow down and to breathe and to, treat themselves, like you said, like their number one asset. I'm curious, will you share, when your clients come to you, what is the situation they're in? And then when they work with you, what shifts do they notice? And I guess there's a question within that, which is, that there's a level of trust that is needed to really surrender and kind of slow down and treat yourself like your number one asset. I'm just curious what that brings up for people when they make that transition, and what they find is possible when they do.
Yeah, such a great question. I think what I find most with the women who come to me, because especially the women who come into my private mastermind program, which is a year long. So I am very conscientious about having conversations with women before they join. So I want them to know, when you're committing to be with someone for a year, you want to make sure it's a good relationship. It's really good for everyone on both sides. So I feel like the thing that really came through was that the women who are coming to me are tired in a few different ways. One way is they're probably physically like, okay, I'm ready to just do something different because my body's not, I'm not feeling like I'm in my body. In fact, they feel like they're walking around in their head most of the time. Like their intimacy is disconnected. They're not, we talk about, we get into, when was the last time you had a good orgasm? Like when was the last time you took a bath? You know, those things that really bring pleasure to your body and inform other areas of your life. The other way that I find that these women are tired is that they've been compartmentalizing their work, their life, their family, themselves. And so there's no flow to it. You know, there's no, not necessarily the word balance, because I have yet to find a good enough definition for it, except for that when you personalize the balance to your own life, it might go in cycles where, you know, this month I'm working a lot because I'm working on a program, but next month I'm very conscious of taking time off. You know, so it's a balance over time, not a balance in a whole life.
Right.
So it's a balance over time. When you're passionate and when you're driven, you're not going to be comfortable sitting there for a month doing nothing. You're just not. You want to be creative. You want to do something, right? So I'm not telling women to just like forget about work. I love work. Work is part of the package. So it's about finding a flow and a rhythm to not feel like you're constantly wishing, like, I'm working, I can't believe this, I wish I was with my kid. You're with your kid, I wish I was, you know, doing something else. Like you're never 100% fully wherever you are. And the thing that I always say is like, and this has happened to me, like you're in an intimate moment, you know, in bed with your partner or whatever, and you're literally thinking about the next day's to-do list.
Oh man.
I have done that so many times. And my husband, like, he looks at me, he's like, are you here? I'm like, oops. No, like we get playful about it because he knows it's not, you know, it's not personal to him. It's me and my journey. And he'll have his little cues where he'll say like, oh, where are you? Where are you? You know, it pulls me back in. And so it's a practice. It's not like one and done. You're not done once you realize you're doing self-care. It's like, it's a process of daily practices, creating sacred space and time for honoring different areas of your life. So the biggest thing I think is really helping women create that flow. And once they see that it is an internal process, that there is time and space for everything they want to do, and really claim that playtime is just as important as time on your spreadsheet doing your accounting, is just as important as, you know, sitting outside in the grass doing nothing. So it's just that permission and that perspective that if it's calling to you, if it's intuitively calling to you to go and spend the day by the lake, you know, and you and I have laughed about this before because we both like, it's Tuesday afternoon, it's time to take a bath.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Sometimes that's what your body needs, and pushing through it. I know that feeling intimately. And that's what a lot of women who come to me, you know, are feeling. I feel like I'm pushing through instead of just being present and really enjoying the process. So I wish for every woman in the world to just really claim and give themselves permission to be where they are, to trust that play and pleasure and joy are really important elements of success, just as much as education and focusing and making that sales call. You know, they're all included.
Absolutely. Totally. I love that. And I know that one of the things that you're a big advocate for is having a morning routine. So tell us about that. Why is it important to have a morning routine? What is a morning routine? What's possible when you develop a morning routine?
Oh, so much is possible. It's one of those things that I was challenged to do within that yoga intensive that I was telling you about. So in that process, the leader, the teacher, my mentor challenged each of us we were learning a sequence of yoga postures that would eventually become the thing that you teach if you chose to continue that path. So she challenged us to do it every morning, have a morning yoga practice. And this was during the time where my son was pretty young and sleep was quite the commodity in my life. Like I just couldn't imagine waking up earlier. I love to just wake up when my body woke up. And, you know, so sleep was one of those really important things to me. And I thought, there's no way. There's just no way I'm going to wake up earlier, except that she kept challenging us to do this and really she actually introduced some really cool daily practices that I wanted to incorporate into the morning, like dry brushing and tongue scraping and warm lemon water, like really cool things that activate your physical body as well. And so I decided one day, I'm like, okay, look, I can't avoid this and I can do 5 minutes. I'll do 5 minutes. If I can do 5 minutes, then maybe I can do more. And so for about a week or two, I snoozed a little bit through the time that I intended to wake up until I didn't. And so I got up and I was still sort of sleepy and it was dark in my room. And I just went through the poses. I went through the breath exercises. I went through the first few poses that took me under 10 minutes, really under 10 minutes. And so I thought, okay, that was really good. Like I feel good. But I allowed myself to keep it under 10 minutes. And so I did that for a couple of weeks. And then we met with the women in the circle who were in this yoga. There were about 20 of us. And they're like, okay, who's been doing the morning thing? And I raised my hand. I'm like, I've been doing it. I'm like, how? You know, like nobody wanted to wake up.
Everyone was blown off that assignment.
Truly, everyone was blowing it off. And I thought, you know what? I did it for 5 to 10 minutes and it worked. And they just sort of looked at me and we had this conversation about it like, like I had given myself permission to make it my own.
Yeah.
And so after a few weeks, I wanted to do more because my body was feeling better. And I realized that it started to affect my energy level throughout the entire morning. So the more yoga I was doing in the morning, the more I did my breathing, meditation, my little rituals of body brushing, which really, if you ever have done body brushing, if you haven't done it, try it. It makes you feel like your entire body is buzzing, and there's some cool how-tos on YouTube. Highly recommend it. It's awesome. So that became one of my morning rituals. And so it took me I started doing it over a couple of years. And so when it came to putting together my programs, I thought this has to be in there because if I look at my own life and what's really working for me and what allows me to show up divinely guided, connected, lit up, present, not distracted for what I have to do that day, it's my morning routine. So it became a staple. So now I've got this whole new piece of what I do. Like I teach an entire month of morning routine in my year-long program because it takes time, right? So even for me, it took time to do it consistently. Now, even if I'm on vacation, I still have some modified morning routine. So really, I'm calling it morning mindset magic because it really is. And it sets up your mindset for the day. The magic part of it is because it really feels like something otherworldly. It feels divine, I make sure that part of my morning routine is about connecting with divine guidance and my intuition.
Yeah, I love that. And I have to second that. That's a really good way to put it. It does feel magic. And there's just something about the energy of it, the space of it, there's something sort of magical about mornings anyway, where sort of the rest of the world is kind of asleep and you're awake, or even if people are waking up, it's just, there's something about that. But then when you go into this space of meditation or connecting or whatever, there's just something very sacred about it that in my experience, if I don't do it, it's like my day is just a little bit duller or number or something like that. And when I do it, it's like I'm so much more present throughout, no matter what's going on. It's just there's so much more ease and flow in the day to follow. So I love that that's a big part of your work. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was also just going to mention real quickly, as I was doing research for this course, and in general, you can interview any successful person in their own respective field, and everyone has something that they do in the morning. Even Tony Robbins talked about it during his interview with Marie Forleo, the founder of B School. He talked about his routine, which was like 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes of these really interesting things, which I can't remember fully right now, but they were super intense, focused time.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's really quite powerful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out that interview. But yeah, you're right. Everybody I know who's doing really well and successful gives that to themselves. And I love what you shared earlier about it's the play and the rest and all of that is just as important as handling business. And somehow in those cracks of spaciousness, things magically happen and get done without you being the one to do them. So it's just a constant reminder, I guess, that is true, and practicing that and just surrendering and trusting and doing it and witnessing for yourself that that's how it works. So tell us, I'm curious, I know that you you said it's morning morning magic. There was another word.
Morning mindset magic.
Morning mindset magic. Is that something that is available if our heroines would love to check that out and find out more about that?
It is. So there's going to be 66 days of these type of rituals,
Ooh,
and
brilliant.
I'm going to share that with you as soon as it's ready. But right now, the best way that people really get to start is just starting with the 21 days of self-care, because it's so simple. I really made it. I was consciously and mindfully making it super, super simple. One little thing, it won't take you more than 5 minutes to do each thing. And so that's a good place to start. And then people tend to want more. And so really the next step from that would be doing the 66 days of the morning mindset magic piece. And I'll be sure to share that with you and your community first and foremost as soon as it's hot off the presses and ready to go.
Perfect. And I love that it's 21 days of self-care. It's, there's that statistic. It takes 21 days to form a new habit. So just making that commitment for 21 days, 3 weeks. We can do anything for 21 days in 3 weeks. And what could be more luscious than actually just giving ourselves the gift of self-care for 21 days? That's a good assignment. I love it.
It is.
Yeah. So we'll make sure we have the link to that in the article here. So heroines tuning in, you can get some luscious divine self-care for yourself, and that's great. So Elena, I'm curious, if you had one message that you could share with our business heroines who are tuning in here today, who are wanting to really take their businesses to the next level, get their work out into the world in a bigger way, and really be creating life on their terms and enjoying the process, what words of wisdom can you impart upon us?
Oh, so many things. First of all, I think just looking back and seeing what works really, really well, there's two things that come up, two things that I would give myself advice for early on. One is to give yourself permission to do it your way from the start, because there's so many women who get stuck in comparison and get stuck in trying to do it somebody else's way. And it's really, it's almost like seductive to think, oh, I'm going to do your formula and it's going to happen to me exactly the same way it happened to you. I'm going to experience the same success, the same amount of money. And when it doesn't work, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess I'm not an entrepreneur. So I see that, and I felt it many times myself. And I realized those times that I felt it the strongest was when I was trying to follow somebody else's formula. Now, that isn't to say that there are not formulas for the best way to design a website, the best way to run a Facebook ad, the best way to whatever, right? Copywriting, how-tos. There's some really great tips and tricks that people have done so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And with that, you are not a wheel. You are a unique being that's comprised of millions of cells who've had thousands of experiences, ancestry that's unique, the places you've lived, the foods you love, the things you've done that make you who you are, the stories that you've experienced. We as human beings love stories, and there's a reason for that, because we relate to people. So why do we relate? Because we see ourselves in the mirrors of your stories. So your stories are yours. So I would really inspire women to take a pause and if they feel stuck, look into your own life. What's worked really well for you? What points of transformation have you had? What would you do no matter what? And that's where you start. Do it your way. Don't feel like you have to follow any formula. And then the second thing is to really find that energy to keep going, is because it is tiring to be an entrepreneur. It's a lot to do, right? So besides getting support, is really start a daily practice that ignites your body, your mind, that helps you to smooth out your emotions, something that really allows you to show up every day. So whether it's a morning walk, morning yoga, meditating, which is super powerful if you find a practice that works for you. Really, really important is to do something every day that helps you realign back to your intentions, back to asking what's most important. So I can go on and on. There's so many important things, but I think those two are a really good place to start.
Really perfect. Yes. And 100% agreement. Doing things your way, being in alignment with yourself is part of being in flow. And then this piece about the daily practice, it's just it's essential. It's essential. And a great place to start with that is with your 21 days of self-care. I think that's just brilliant, and I'm so happy that we get to make that available to the business heroines tuning in. Elena, thank you so much for being a beautiful genius goddess heroine, and for sharing your wisdom with our peeps. It's just such a pleasure to be interviewing you and to be featuring you on our cover. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And you made my childhood dream of being a cover girl come true. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. I granted a wish. That's pretty awesome. That's
Truly,
awesome.
thank you. It's been really amazing having this conversation. I think there's great nuggets that came out of it. So I hope, I hope they take it and run with it and go do what they love.
Oh yes, for sure. And thank you, heroines, for tuning in. I know you enjoyed that, and be sure to check out Elena's 21 Days to Self-Care and give that as a gift to yourself. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to Business Heroine Radio for the entrepreneur who says she will and does. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out what's new at businessheroinemagazine.com today.